Welcome to Pilates Teacher's Manual, your guide to becoming a great Pilates teacher. I'm Olivia, and I'll be your host. Join the conversation and the Pilates community on Instagram at Pilates Teacher's Manual, and visit buymeacoffee.com/Olivia Podcasts to support the show. Today's chapter starts now. Hello, everyone. Welcome back to the podcast. I am so excited to be talking with Sonia R. Price Herbert today. If you do not follow her and you do not know her, she is absolutely incredible. She's a Pilates teacher, a writer, a classical rebel, an anti-racism educator, and community leader. You can find her on Instagram at Commando Fitness Collective. I will link to all of her great stuff in the show notes. We are going to be talking all things Pilates and Pilates teaching today. So thank you so much for being on the show today, Sonia.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm excited about talking about Pilates, although that's what I talk about most of the time. But, besides anti-racism, but, they all connect. But it'll be nice to talk some Pilates stuff too.
Yes, 100%. So first things first, how did you find Pilates? How did this become part of your life?
Well, my daughter, who is now 27, she'll be 28 actually in 2021. My daughter was a dancer for a very long time. I started her when she was 6 years old, and she danced until she graduated high school. As soon as she got her diploma, she threw the dance shoes away, and that was it. But she was dancing at this school called Harlem School of the Arts, and my son was also taking drumming lessons there. Things people don't know about me, but I was a dance assistant there for a bunch of teachers, actually. And yes, I do have something of a dance background, but I don't really talk about that because I feel like I'm more of a singer and, like musical theater, good mover, that kind of thing versus like a dancer, but I loved it. One of my friends who I also assisted, he used to teach like level 1 and 2 modern, and he told me about this Pilates class. I had never heard of it. And I said, well, who's teaching it? And he said, well, Cynthia Shipley. Well, Cynthia Shipley is my daughter's ballet teacher. So I said, oh, well, I love her. So I don't know what this is you're talking about, but what is it about? And he's like, well, it's about your core and all this stuff. And I thought, well, I think I'm probably good, but I'll give it a try since Cynthia is teaching it. So I go to the class with him and he demonstrates a couple of times. I'm like, wow, he looks great, but I'm very competitive. So I'm like, oh, no problem, After 2 kids anyway, like I'm pretty strong. I feel like I'm good, so I shouldn't have any problem. Well, that was not the case. I was so disappointed in myself. And because I'm the person that I am, I said, I'm going to keep coming to this class and I'm going to master these exercises. And before I knew it, I started to really fall in love with Pilates. I never really said this on other podcasts, but she had a ballet class that she would teach. And I think I took like a certain level. It wasn't an adult class. I took it with students, but I forgot what level it was that I would take with them. And after class, I used to get this deep inner hip pain, on my right side. And I was going to a holistic chiropractor at the time who was wonderful. And the pain went away. Once I started taking Pilates, I would do it twice a week. And I would take, her ballet class. And then, I'd do my assisting, which was mostly on the weekends. And I was still in social work at the time, full time. So I went to my chiropractor and I said, hey, I started taking this Pilates class. I'd never heard of it, but it feels great. And my hip pain that I had is gone. And he said, keep taking Pilates twice a week and come to me twice a week and your whole body's going to change. Well, he was correct. And I thought, what a very smart man, because I don't even really like chiropractors, but he was a great one. So I kept going. Later on, I asked her about becoming certified because I was always interested in fitness and I not always worked out, but in college, I started working out a lot more because I've always had issues with depression and anxiety. And I found that movement helped a lot and it helped to change my moods. It didn't solve it. It just alleviated some of the pain. So I just kept going, even into my marriage. My ex-husband worked out. And so we worked out together. Kids happen and things happen. You kind of stop working out at the capacity that you were before children. After we moved from Fort Worth, Texas, because I'm originally from Texas, to New York City, that's when my daughter started dance training at Harlem School of the Arts, which is a primarily Black school. So I learned with a Black teacher, with Black people in a Black school. And Cynthia Shipley is one of the best out there. She, I believe, is a level 2, I think, Romana's Pilates teacher, but she is one of the top teachers there at Romana's Pilates. I started looking for certifications. She recommended, obviously, Romana's Pilates. That didn't happen. That's a whole other podcast, but I ended up at Core Pilates NYC, and the rest is history. I've been teaching for about 13 years, and I really love it. I got into teaching Pilates because, number one, because I really, really did love it, and I wanted to teach it. Number two, because I wondered why my own community didn't know anything about Pilates, because I didn't know. And so I figured, well, I've never heard any other Black person talk about it. I wanted to be able to take something that made me feel great to my own community. So that's what I did in the initial part of my early teaching career.
So that's an incredible teacher training experience, because for you, it was a career change. You were established in social work and then you transitioned to being a Pilates teacher. So what kind of motivated you to shift gears and make Pilates your calling? Because I know that Martin Reed, who was on the podcast just a few weeks ago, was also a counselor. So there's a lot of overlaps, I think, in the work. But what was the game changer for you?
Well, the game changer was I got fired. That was the game changer. I have to say, I've been on so many podcasts, and it took me a while to actually talk about that. Actually, the podcast that I ended up revealing the real shift was Muscles to Masses. And I think she may have since changed the name. But we were having a very deep conversation about race and racism, white supremacy, all these kinds of things. We were talking a lot about my life and things like that. And at that point, I felt like I was vulnerable enough and felt healed enough to actually reveal that. Because it's, who wants to say that you got fired? I had never been fired before, ever. And, 15 years of being in social work and really loving it and being there because I loved it. But I was going through a divorce at the time, and my work was just failing. And I knew that, my supervisors knew that. They did everything they could, and I did too. It was actually a very nice break. We actually hugged it out and cried, but they still loved me and they still cared for me. So it was actually, I guess it was kind of like a fire, or maybe a sending off kind of. I was still fresh and new kind of teaching Pilates, but I was just like, well, I have 2 kids to support. I have myself to support. I was in a brand new apartment. And so I needed to support myself. So I said, I'm just going to dive into Pilates. And so I did. I started working for Equinox full-time. I was working for them part-time on the weekends. I was there every day, all day, trying to build my clientele, figuring out who I wanted to work with, who I didn't, making friends with folks there. Because it's about selling. It's about, you have to sell yourself. One of the good things I learned from Equinox is how to sell myself. And I found out who I was as a teacher. Yeah, I got fired. And now it doesn't hurt so much to say that anymore, because, and this is probably the first time I've articulated it like this, that it wasn't a firing, it was more of a sending off. So thank you for that, because, it takes a great interviewer to be able to pull those things out of folks.
Thank you for sharing. I do want to come back to your teacher training, because you had also, I would say, a unique teacher training experience. How was that?
My teacher training was actually not very Black at all. I was the only Black apprentice. So I was probably one of few, if probably the only Black body they worked with. I did have a Black teacher trainer who is in my group, Tila Anderson. She's a teacher of teachers and certification teacher over at Real Pilates in NYC. That was it. It was just me and her. She looked at me, I looked at her, and we looked at each other, and that was it. Even though I was paying attention to the fact that I was the only Black person and that she was the only Black teacher trainer, but I was still there to get my certification. I was like, well, when this is over, I'm going to take this to my community Now, I'm not saying that it was a bad experience because I did make some friends there who are still people that I know today. We still talk, back and forth and things like that. But I think if I had done teacher training now, it probably would have been with another school. It would have been different because there's more opportunities for me to train with a Black teacher than it was then, at least to me. And although Cynthia Shipley is a teacher trainer for Romanes Pilates, she is only one of the teachers. So I would have gotten to work with her, but not with primarily Black teachers. I probably would have been, again, the only Black apprentice. Maybe there'd be one other, but that's about it. But I'd say in this day and age now, if I were getting certified now, more likely I would be in a class with Black teachers with a Black teacher trainer today.
There's amazing trainings that I've seen. I know that Len Cola at California Pilates is doing Black to Pilates, which is incredible. Tab Pilates, Tabitha in Chicago, where I am, is doing a training as well. And also I'm in the yoga world. I love Shanna Small, and she's doing a BIPOC yoga teacher training. So I'm loving that community is there, burgeoning, growing.
I mean, things change, I've evolved since I was in teacher training. I mean, I've always been for my own community, but, you evolve, your eyes open, you learn and absorb more. The way I saw things then, I don't see them like that now. I was also still, raising my children at the time. I was married and now not a married woman anymore, and my children are adults. I see the world differently. I see Pilates differently. And my body has changed tremendously since, 2007. It's chunkier, which I love. And, I'm in a menopause stage, which, every now and then I love it and sometimes I don't. But, you evolve over that time and you change. It's like, I think for a very long time, we always tried to make people fit into Pilates versus making Pilates fit into them. I'm at that point where I'm relearning or learning how to make Pilates fit the body that I have now, which is, again, completely different from 2007.
Knowing all of these things and working with Pilates through a long period of time, what is your secret sauce to teaching? How has your teaching changed? How have you kind of done that change for yourself?
I have started to, and this was already a skill that I developed in social work, but I'm also that way. So it's like my personality fits social work so well because I was already sort of like that. I was already a very compassionate person. I wanted to find out how people tick and where they came from, why they acted the way that they acted, and how could I help them? When I became a social worker, then all those skills increased those things even more. I can't remember where it was. Maybe it was I think I might have been talking to Martin Reed. He was doing one of his Freestyle Fridays or Freestyle Wednesdays, one of those. And we're talking about the it factor for teachers. And I said, for me, the it factor is observation. A great teacher is a great observer. Because as soon as your client walks through the door, you should be looking at them. You should be looking at how they stand, as they're talking to you, how they're moving, taking their shoes off, putting their coat on, all those kinds of things. And you don't have to stare them down. You can talk to them at the same time and observe. Thank goodness for the many years that I was in social work, I had to observe my clients. I had to observe their body language. So that told me a lot about them. That told me how I could approach them. That told me how they felt, because they might tell me that, yes, I'm feeling happy today, but their body language tells me something completely different. So it's the same thing in Pilates. And that is a skill that I continue to perfect over the years of teaching, and not even from them walking through the door and standing there and talking to me or whatever, but when they're on the equipment, when they're on the mat. That's important because that tells you what they need. If last week everything looked aligned and this week their left hip is elevated and their right shoulder is up, there's something going on. How do I address that with them? Sometimes they don't even know that that's happening. When you tell them, they're like, oh my goodness, really? And then you align them really quickly and there's like, this feels very crooked. And it's like, yeah, so we're going to figure out what this is. We're going to choose some exercises or whatever. We're going to get you back aligned and things like that. And they walk out feeling better and things like that. That makes the client feel like you care. Based upon your observation, you're saying, hey, this is what I think you need. This is what I'm seeing. Are you feeling this? And they're like, yes, I'm actually feeling it, And so it gives like this authenticity or this genuine compassion for them when they know that you're paying attention to them. That to me is an it factor as a teacher. And the rest of those things, like being genuine and caring and compassionate for your client, that's how you develop rapport, which is another skill in social work. I had to learn how to develop a rapport with even some of the most difficult clients. And I've had some very, very difficult clients. I was always given very difficult clients when I was in social work. Somehow I was able to develop this rapport with them, kind of sort of like that in Pilates, not so much, but sort of. But I'm able to develop this rapport with them. Yeah, has my teaching evolved over the 13 years, almost 14 years? Yes, it has. I've gone from sort of rote teaching. I think we all sort of did that because I felt like, and this is the Sagittarius thing, there's always something more. This exercise it can't just be just this. And I've always been one of those folks who, again, wondering, well, why? Trying to explore, the whys and the hows and the whats and the whens and things like that. With that, I believe I was able to kind of find ways to help my client achieve the exercise, or even letting them know that, you know what, maybe this exercise is not for you, but there's many other exercises that are. Helping my client feel like they've achieved something. I've had clients, and I'm sure you've had this too, where you've had clients that looked over to the side and they saw this person doing this amazing teaser and they're like, my teaser doesn't look like that. And I was like, that's fine because you're not them. So your teaser looks like this. Do you remember when you couldn't do a teaser? Well, you're absolutely right, Sonia. I know I'm right. So this is your teaser. My teaser is going to look completely different. We don't have the same bodies, thank goodness, because we'd be boring. And me as a Sagittarius, I would probably stick a pencil in my eye. But, helping your client be okay with them, with themselves, being okay with their body and how Pilates looks on them, and that it's going to be different. To me, that's a good teacher, someone who's observant. With that observation comes compassion and kindness and willingness to change when you need to change. Maybe you set up a whole session with them. Sometimes it just goes out the window, but that's not what they need. So you give them what they need and they appreciate it versus like, you come in and you just run them through exercises. That's not my teaching style. There's times when you are going to like let folks kind of move. Sometimes that's just what they need too. But as a teacher, that's a skill that you have to learn. Every time my client comes in, how do I determine what they need? Well, first I have to listen with my eyes. I also have to listen with my ears. But I have to listen and not respond to everything. Sometimes it's better if I'm listening with my eyes and I'm listening with my ears without response, because everything doesn't require a response or a well and a but, That's how you figure out what your client needs. Because if you're not listening to them, then what are we really doing here?
I think that that's so powerful because that's something that you can't learn, I'd say, in your teacher training, even in the best teacher training. That's really something that comes from maybe past experience, if you were in a line of work where you were able to develop those skills. But, we don't really talk about compassion in teacher training or listening to, what your clients don't say. And there's some observation that comes into play, but I remember in my teacher training, it was just like so much panic trying to remember what spring setting they were supposed to be on and what was coming next, that it took me some years of teaching to actually be in the room with a person. And just like you said, to listen with your eyes.
And those are things, like you said, you can't really teach observation skills necessarily, but you can give examples. I feel like that certifications have become so rote now. There's like, teach the exercises, this is what you do, perform it, all that stuff, pass the tests, and then you're done. versus, what is involved in teaching. And I guess maybe they feel like, well, you get that when you, in mentorship and stuff like that. But I feel like certification is also a time where you should be mentoring your teachers, because these folks represent you. If they walk out and they're whack teachers, and what does that mean? That means that your certification is whack, but I want to see more teacher trainings go beyond just the rote of exercises, but also teaching you how to connect to your student. One of the things that I say to folks who reach out to me about becoming a Pilates instructor and finding the certification, my first question to them every time is, do you want to teach it, or do you just enjoy doing it? Because there's a lot of teachers out there, and I have worked with many, who I think really just enjoy doing it. They really don't want to teach. And it's pretty obvious. They burn out quicker. They don't stay in Pilates that long. They're out of there. Now, granted, yes, do we burn out? Absolutely we do, because we see people all the time, every day, all day, and listen to 50 million conversations and, all this kind of stuff. So it can be a lot. But I truly believe that there are many folks out there who are truly just not teachers. And that's something that they have to examine before they actually go into a teacher training. And it's okay if you just enjoy doing it. There's people who just enjoy doing Pilates. I used to work for this studio called Pilates Challenge, and the owner at the time, and she was not a Pilates instructor, but she took Pilates like a lot. She knew like all the exercise, she knew the spring change, everything. She knew how to transition. She took it often. She took sessions with all of us, literally. I guess there was probably maybe like 25 teachers there, maybe. So she took sessions with all of us. But she was like, I don't want to get certified. That's your job. I just want to make sure you guys have a space where you can teach freely the way that you teach, and you can be yourself. That's one of few, probably, Pilates studios that I've truly enjoyed working at. And I mean few, even including my current one. Not that I don't like it there, but it was a different kind of environment. So, just because you like it doesn't mean that you want to teach it. So you have to figure out, well, do I just enjoy doing it? Maybe I don't know if I want to teach it. And so you just don't. And if you find out, this is something I do want to teach. This is something I want to add. Maybe I'm going to do it part-time. Maybe I might transition over to it as a career or not. Some people don't, they just teach on the weekends or teach whenever they can. There's lots of, the girls in my Black Girl Pilates group who don't, they don't teach it full time. They have a full-time job. Some of them are doctors and all kinds of stuff, but they teach it on the side on the weekends or whatever. They do other things, and that's fine. But I think that that's the first step in figuring out, do I really want to teach this? Or do I just enjoy going to classes and that's it? And that will relieve a lot of the studios of a hell of a lot of headache from teachers who really, truly don't want to be there.
That's true. Hi there. I hope you're enjoying today's chapter so far. There's great stuff coming up after the break, too. Be sure to subscribe wherever you're listening and visit buymeacoffee.com/Olivia Podcasts to support the show. There you can make a one-time donation or become a member for as little as $5 a month. Membership comes with some awesome perks, including a shout out in the next episode, a monthly newsletter, a monthly Zoom call with me, and more. You can also visit links.oliviabioni.com/affiliates to check out some sweet deals on products I use and love. Now back to the show. I think that as much as teaching Pilates is about Pilates, it's also about teaching and wanting to connect with students and make the thing that you love accessible and fun and fit the people that you're working with. It can't just be about, this is Pilates, this is what we're doing. Like, I've had Pilates sessions with people and you would say that we did Pilates for like 5 minutes. We ended with mermaid or something, but it's depending on what they need, depending on what's going on. It might be a stretch sesh, and that's okay.
Yeah. And Pilates is not a dogmatic thing. I think that we've made it very like a religion almost. And there's God, you know. Joseph Pilates isn't necessarily the God, I would say. He is some being out there that created it, but he's not the God. There is a god or goddess of Pilates. And so that is the person that we look to, even though she's no longer here. She dictated how Pilates is supposed to go. But that's not how Pilates is really supposed to be, I don't think. I feel like, again, in all the certifications, they tell you, well, give the body what it needs, give the body what it needs. But then they really don't mean that. You got to do it this and this and this and this and this, and it has to be in this order. And if you don't do it this way, then, and I mean, that's literally going to drive teachers crazy. Like, if I don't do it this way, it's going to be crazy. For someone like myself, who very Sagittarius in a lot of ways, but very, kind of OCD in a way, that could be a lot. That's not how Pilates or exercise really is. If you look at personal trainers, when they're writing programs, for their clients, the programs are going to be different every time they meet. They're going to progress them. They're going to regress them. Sometimes they're going to stay the same. Maybe their warm up will be 30 minutes for the first time. And then eventually, like, they can just do a 5-minute warm up and they're good. That's the way I feel like Pilates is supposed to go. But it's become so dogmatic. And if you don't teach it this way, you're going to Pilates hell. And that, to me, makes it inaccessible to a lot of people because it's so dogmatic. It's so about the Holy Spirit of Pilates and the Jesus of Pilates, or whoever it is that you pray to or whatever. I'm just using Christian terms because that's my background, but it's become like that, So Joseph Pilates, who knows how he would respond if he saw most of the things that are going on. I mean, everybody thinks that they know. We don't really know. We really will never know. But what we do know is that he would be happy to know that Pilates is out here the way that it is now. He would be happy about that. We can't all agree on that. Now, how he would respond otherwise about, how people are teaching, I don't really know. Nobody knows. And I mean, no one. Everybody thinks that they know what Joseph Pilates believes, ate, drank, smoked, everything. But nobody really, really knows Joseph Pilates but him. Pilates died with him. So nobody's really teaching anything authentic. We're just all teaching our interpretation of what Pilates is, because even like in our teacher trainings, right? Everybody's different in how they approach the work. I mean, if we are all supposed to be like cookie cutters, it would be so boring. Thank goodness that we're not all alike, because I don't know if I would have made it, especially with my Sagittarius mind. I couldn't have done it because I get bored easily. I hope that, one day we can get out of this whole dogmatic type of very everything has to go this way. And I believe that that's also the beginnings of bullying too, because things are it's so dogmatic. And if you don't pray this way, you got to leave. If you don't pay your tithes, you got to leave. It's like that. It's very cultish, and it doesn't need to be. It's just exercise, folks. That's all it is, at least from what I've heard. That's what I've been teaching. That's what you've been teaching too, right, Olivia?
Yes. That's what we need on t-shirts. Pilates. It's just exercise.
I might have to do that. Uh-oh. Don't take it, y'all, because that's mine.
I think that would be a good one.
I'll reach out to my sister, Pilates Comics. Let's do it.
Yes. And there's more stuff that you're working on. You are a woman of many hats and many adventures. I've attended some of your really incredible, powerful webinars, and I was wondering if you can share a little bit about what you're offering the Pilates and fitness world right now, too.
Yeah, so in June, it almost feels like it's 2021 yet, but it's not until January 20th. That's when 2021 is, if you understand what I mean. That's when it's really going to be 2021. Yeah, so in June, I started not really on a whim. It's been something that was in my heart for a long time, but this became the time. And I started teaching these anti-racism webinars. I was like, well, I've seen what's been going on in the Pilates industry. It's, up until recently is really, it's horrible. The 13 and a half years I've been in, it's been some of the most anti-Black and racist space I've ever been in. So I started out with this intro to anti-racism for Pilates instructors and studio owners, and also for gyms and yeah, it's just kind of expanded from there. And now I have a little series called Decolonizing Pilates. A friend of mine and I are actually in the process of trademarking that. I think that my whole series, or at least the Pilates series, will completely be decolonizing Pilates as a whole versus like intro and then decolonizing Pilates 1, 2, 3. That will kind of be the brand of that. And I can't necessarily use fitness because one of my good friends has decolonizing fitness, and I think that they may have trademarked it already. So I have to use something else. So that's out. So I have those webinars going on. I will start those back up in January, and I'm thinking seriously about January being more of a sort of conference style, meaning that I will have a whole day of all of them. So everybody will get to experience all of them in one day. So I'm thinking about kind of putting that together, because I'm Sagittarius and we get bored and we like to create. We like to change things and make it interesting. So yeah, so that's one of the main things I'm working on. I just started a mentorship program for Black instructors who are either interested in Pilates certification or they're going to be in Pilates certification, or maybe they're, just a teacher. And so just to give them, just the things we were talking about earlier, things that we didn't get. I definitely didn't get as a Black teacher, and although I feel like I had one of the best teachers in the world, and she is, but she couldn't mentor me, she had many other people to mentor. And there were just things that I didn't know as I went into the Pilates industry, went into fitness full time, that I didn't know. Also navigating very white spaces as a Black person and the things that you'll experience, and being able to come back to someone who looks like you and say, I don't know if this is racist or not, but is it me? And then it's like, no, it's not you, Also, teaching them as well. And although I'm a classical teacher, what I've told, my mentees, and there's about 11, there's 2 guys and the rest are women, all ages, which is great. I love it. I want to give them what I did not have, teaching them, not really caring, I don't care if they're contemporary or classical, we're all teaching Pilates, it doesn't matter. Oh, what I was going to say was what is not seen in certifications is there's not very much of talk about especially on the contemporary side, but I think this should be all sides, on his original exercises and why he might have or probably came up with those specific exercises, and why there's a specific order, that the order has changed, that people have added, folks. So don't get it twisted, because what we have been taught in classical Pilates is not his order. That is someone else's order. We all know who that is. I don't have to call any names, but knowing his order, And so I think that that's important. And so that's why, I told him, I said, hey, even if you get certified contemporary, that's fine. You're still teaching Pilates. But it is good for you to know the classical work, why he developed it like that, or Joe's work. Let's just call it Joseph Pilates' work, not really classical work, but Joseph Pilates' work, and understanding, the man behind the method, and having folks read, Return to Life. His other book I don't recommend because there's a very racist comment in there, and But Return to Life is a great book. I have it. The newest book by John Steele called Caged Lion, that fills in a lot of holes in the history of Pilates, who really was not the queen of Pilates, to be honest, but, was no shade, thank you, and all that stuff. But was, there's no heiress or heir to Pilates, that heir is dead now, God rest his soul, and his wife is dead. So, those were the heirs to Pilates. There's no heirs. We're just messengers of the method. So, said all that to say, I'm currently doing that mentorship program. And this is my newest one. It's interesting that I can't remember exactly what you said at the very beginning of the podcast, but I am also going to start a mentorship program specifically for white and non-Black POCs to be mentored by me. The difference with that mentorship program and any others rather is that it will come from an anti-racism standpoint, because I want to catch these teachers at the very beginnings of their teaching, right? So before they actually walk into that studio, they've already started to examine themselves, because these are the people that have to go in and work with the people that I'm working with in my other mentorship program for the Black folks, right? So I'm working with the Black people to kind of pick up on the things that they think, well, I don't know, am I crazy? No, you're not. And then I'm working with the white folks about like, I probably shouldn't have touched their hair, or I probably should not have made this statement, or how can I make my Black client or my Black coworker feel safe in my presence? I have some things that I need to examine as a Pilates teacher. This is a very white industry. How can I be more of a solution than the problem? And also knowing that even with this work that I'm doing on myself, that I will fall, but all I do is get back up again, right? And I keep going because this is a journey. There's no end to this journey. It's just a journey to keep growing. So I'm very excited about that. And I'm looking for those folks. So now that we're talking about it, and I want to get a small, like a small group, because right now I think in that group, I have like 11 or 12 people. So I want to get around that time, at the most like 15 folks. And you'll be taught by me. We'll teach each other. You'll be able to come, ask me questions. We'll talk about the exercises, or even talk about the stuff that you're doing, in your certifications. And we'll talk about the history, especially the history from a Black perspective with Kathy Grant and things like that. So I think that that's also important for, those white and non-Black Pilates instructors, because, they didn't know either, really. I mean, they naturally assume that because everybody's white, well, obviously she must be white. She's got to be. Why not? I mean, we felt the same way, because we're conditioned. And so I want to catch them at the beginnings so they can start that examination then. So then when they do come to my webinars later on, maybe they own their studio or whatever, they're already kind of there. They've already started evaluating themselves. And they're like, if they own a studio, they're like, hey, I've been trying to do this work. And, I want my studio to be, to also be anti-racist as well. That's what I'm working towards. This is how I want my staff. This is how I want it to go. And so this is what we're doing. So they'll feel sure of themselves. I'm excited, not so excited, because there's going to be a lot of emotional labor. But I'm a revolutionary bitch. So, and I do revolutionary shit. Maybe that should be a t-shirt too, right? My poor sister, Tarek, is going to just be tearing her hair out. Like every time I turn around, Sonya's got a t-shirt thing, which I do have a t-shirt that's coming out. That's another thing you should know. And I have to put it up first, but I am going to have a t-shirt that says, fuck the Pilates police. But there's a little asterisk so you could actually kind of wear it and people would be like, is it really that? Yes, it's really that. But it's so me,
That's so awesome. I will link to all of Sonya's incredible stuff in the show notes so that you can follow her, get on her newsletter list, and stay up to date with all of the incredible work that she's doing in the Pilates community and beyond. I am going to say the conversation continues over on Pilates Students Manual. So this is just the first part of my incredible conversation with Sonya. Head over to Pilates Students Manual and there is more good stuff. But thank you, Sonya, for joining me on this podcast.
Yes, absolutely.
Thanks for listening to this week's chapter of Pilates Teacher's Manual, your guide to becoming a great Pilates teacher. Check out the podcast Instagram at Pilates Teacher's Manual, and be sure to subscribe wherever you listen. For more Pilates goodness, check out my other podcast, Pilates Students Manual, available everywhere you listen to podcasts. The adventure continues. Until next time.